Good afternoon, everyone. And again, welcome to our interviews on Masterclass Behind the Music. Today we have Maestro Stephen Lord with us. Hello, Stephen. Welcome.
Hello, old friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. I want to welcome you. First, I'd like to actually thank you for coming on and being a panelist of Masterclass. I love you dearly, and your talent is remarkable, and we're honored to have you. I have a few questions for you. My first one is, was anybody else in your family musical?
My mother's mother was an autodidact playing piano. And actually, in the 19 teens, she left home and she used to play the piano at silent movies.
Really? Wow.
And then my mother's sister, her younger sister, went to the Eastman School.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But for only 1 year, personal reasons, she dropped out. And then she finished her education later. But, and then I don't know, I'm an autodidact. I started playing my sister's piano lessons by ear.
Really?
And then sometime around, I played the accordion for about 6 months.
Really?
When I was maybe 11, but I could always read music. And so that came easily. And when I was maybe 15, I started to play again, just by myself.
Oh.
And my mother's sister forced me at that point to come over to her house and sight read forehand music. And of course, that was so hard. And then she pushed and she pushed and she pushed and she pushed. And interestingly enough, I got so proficient at sight reading.
Wow.
That it happened I made a lot of my career first steps because I could read things and nobody else could do it.
Wow.
And so I was offered, for example, to be an assistant chorus master at the Met when I was a sophomore in college.
You're kidding.
The reason being is I didn't know any opera music. I had never been to an opera, but my piano teacher at Oberlin, they needed somebody who could sight read to come and play the Met auditions. And Kurt Adler, who was the chorus master, was the judge. And he was the judge. And so I would sight read Come Scoglio. I don't know. I could just do it. And he offered me to come to New York to drop out of school and be his assistant at the Met. But of course, that was not practical. And I wasn't even a conservatory student yet. I went to Oberlin as a college student, and I transferred to music later. So everything I've done, I've taught myself.
Really? That's amazing.
No, it's music. Music, music comes out of you somehow. It finds a way to express itself. I knew in college, because I started so late, and besides, I don't think I had the equipment. I was not going to be the person who could play like long, God knows, I was never going to be a big virtuoso pianist. So how was I going to make a living? Well, I could sight read. And so I played for singers, and I learned a lot about singing. And so, all of that, it all comes together. It turns into a nice ragu, in the end. And then conducting happened by accident. Everything seemed to have happened fortuitously, but by accident.
Wow. So how did your conducting, how did that come by?
Well, I worked in a lot of very good opera houses, and I was coaching all the world's, best singers. One day I had Renato Scotto followed by Evelyn Lear, followed by Jolie Verrett, and I was only a kid, but they were coming, who was I to argue, right? And they were paying the fee. Anyway, I started doing all that. And I remember when I was a pianist in Houston on the music staff in the late 70s, I remember Jean-Pierre Ponel saying he wasn't happy with the conductor for a show they were doing. And he came to me and he said, "Maestro, why don't you conduct? This is shit." Because I can't, I don't know how to do it. I can't read all those things. I have no idea. And then, I had others just encouraging me, saying, "Come on, you can do it. You can learn. You can do da, 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 da." And Colin Graham, the wonderful Colin Graham, we were doing a scenes program that I was in charge of, and the conductor couldn't learn all the music and
Really?
couldn't really conduct all the music. So he said, "You'll have to do it." And I said, "I can't do it. This was the first things. It was like Benjamin Britten, because Colin was doing all these Britten things, and
Sure.
and the first thing was the second act of Albert Herring. So I'm looking at it and I'm saying, well, this is odd. And I said, let me see. There are 5 beats in this bar. It's 5/4. How do you do it? So, I started saying, well, I know that's down, that's up. So I'll just go down and bounce around a little bit until it's time to go up. And it was fine, whatever. And things caught on. I never had any lessons, but it was funny because after my first orchestra rehearsal, I happened to have dinner with Leonard Slatkin and his wife in St. Louis. And Leonard said, "So, how did it go? How did it go?" And I went, "Well, went pretty well." I said, "All you have to do is, I guess, is to know the music better than they do." And he said, "Bingo."
Wow. So you really have no formal training in conducting itself. It's just
Nothing.
mostly, wow, that is incredible.
But you can still do Salome. You can still do it.
Jeez.
Do anything.
That's incredible.
Someone said this about Ray Leppard once. I was doing a show, and a pianist, and with Raymond Leppard, and someone said, the music just comes out of him. You don't really have, you have to know basics. Okay.
Sure.
You have to do things, and you have to be able to read music. And, my very first professional that I got paid for thing was to go to Omaha and conduct La Traviata, which was going to be telecast on the Omaha. Okay. Well, okay.
Wow.
So we holed up in a rehearsal room with the score and teaching myself to read the transposing instruments. I had to do that, and as time went on, of course, it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. And after now, I'm not afraid of anything.
That's something.
Yeah, well, and I was always of the mind, because, I basically did mostly opera.
Mm-hmm.
I was always of the mind that if I got a good review and the singers didn't, I was doing something wrong.
Wow.
You know what
Yes.
I'm saying?
Yes.
My job is to make them happy, to make them comfortable, and to allow them to sing. And this is something we don't have anymore. As there's always limits. You have to sing in time, and you have to sing the right notes and in tune and all that. Okay, fine. We know that's all the givens. But our job is collaborative. It's not dictatorial.
Okay.
And there are, yes, we're more experienced. Yes, we know more. But, our job is to make it comfortable for them to sing, as well as keeping the theater going and whatever else. But we have to allow that. And sometimes allowing that to happen means varying from the page a little bit. We're hampered.
Mm-hmm.
We're hampered by the fact that music is divisible by 1 or 2. It's kind of digital, isn't it? In that sense, we have these note values, and then we have stems, and then we have little stems, and then we have 2, and then we have 3. Right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Those aren't literal. Those can't be literal, because we're singing words, and we don't sing like the YouTube artificial intelligence voices that talk.
Yes.
We have to inflect. We all our languages are inflective languages. And so some notes are a little shorter, some notes are a little longer than written. And when people start harping, usually frauds, when they start harping on note values, being strict, well, sometimes, yes, okay, you got to be strict sometimes.
Right.
If it doubles in the orchestra or whatever else. But for the most part, it's to serve the music in the theater. And sometimes that tail is a little shorter and the tail next to it's a little longer and whatever.
Yeah.
All you have to do is understand that when Lerner and Lowe wrote My Fair Lady, they wrote the part of Henry Higgins in notes. Rex Harrison got it, and he said, "I can't sing. I can't sing these notes." So what you do is you listen to Rex Harrison, and you listen to him start the phrase, end the phrase together.
Right.
Basically, all the rhythms are there. They fit together. He'll come with a pitch occasionally.
Yeah.
So when you sing a line in bel canto music, and you have, just a simple accompaniment underneath, for someone to stick strictly to note values negates any expression. Do you think Frank Sinatra sang note values? And yet he was the most expressive. Do you think Ella Fitzgerald sang, no.
Yep.
Yes, they sang phrases.
Yes.
And what we're not taught to do today is to sing phrases. Part of the reason I believe that is that nobody reads poetry, and we have to reads aloud poetry,
Right.
and expressively reads aloud poetry. And we have to understand that most opera libretti are written to poetry.
Yes.
All the Mozarts are written with rhyming couplets.
That's
You know what I mean?
absolutely, yes.
And you have to set up the poem properly, and then you get the phrasing.
Right.
But, if you don't do that, then you don't really ever make music.
Right.
You make sounds and you make beat, you do all this stuff, but you never really make music. You never take the audience on a trip.
Yes.
When you start a phrase, all the kids are in the car, you know what I mean? And you're going to take a trip somewhere, and you're going to go a little fast, you're going to go a little slower, you're going to do all this. But as long as you arrive at your destination together, that all is well. If something is so literal, there's no unpredictability about it.
Right.
It's the same thing about a held note. I have this big deal with people when they hold notes, that inside those notes, there's not enough flexibility.
Right.
And inside those notes, you have to, as the audience member and as the singer, you have to keep it alive so that we don't know what's coming next. Do you know what I mean?
Spontaneous, yes.
We're leading people on our story. We have to tell a story, and telling a story is not being, as Ben Malencic calls it, the music police.
Right. Okay. How did you wind up? I mean, obviously you were just a natural at what you did, but when it comes to languages, and I mean, I know you're fluent in Italian and French. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I've worked with you. The language like that. How did you work that into all this?
Well, I learned all that. I learned, I was the most advanced French student in high school, and I was going to be a French major in college.
Really?
But and once you've learned that, then Italian comes easily. If you German was the hard one, and but that works just fine.
Really?
It
was the opposite. French for me was the most difficult, believe it or not. I still have a hard time with French.
A lot of things learn was Russian. We didn't
really
have Russian, and one of the reasons is that in my days we're baby boomers. And if anything had to do with Russian, it was completely forbidden. Right. We weren't allowed to do anything Russian. And it's something that I would have liked to have learned when I was younger, but I didn't. And then, of course, languages are no good unless you use them, John.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I was lucky that right away in the beginning of my career, I was working with foreign singers, right. And you have to find a way to express yourself. Is it ever perfect? No, never. Are they ever perfect? And then everybody, people talk about that people speak or sing with an accent. Well, if you listen to all the Italians, they all sing with a different accent. Everybody sings with an accent. The point is clarity. It's not that everything is exactly perfect. And whatever. The point is the point.
Exactly. Let me ask you, you've conducted how many different operas? I mean,
I've probably, I think the last I counted, it was 63.
Holy moly.
Some I hope I never see again.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. Out of those operas, have you ever had, and I say this because I know this feeling, where you walked off or out of the pit and you were floating on air. Did you ever have a performance that made you so exhilarated and it went so perfectly that it comes to mind immediately?
I think it's wrong to think about one. It's wrong to think about one. The ones that stand out were my first Norma,
Really?
which
Okay.
I did in Toronto. It was Marina Mesheriakova, who did with wonderful things for a while. It was a new production. And I remember she and my friend Jean-Pierre Furlan, who was the tenor, the last ensemble of that was going along, and I just couldn't stand it. I
Really?
was out of my skin. But there are performances, the end of Così fan tutte makes me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I've done Norma. I think I've done 7 different Norma productions now,
Wow.
and always certain music just gets me. I mean, the end of Salome gives me chills. The interesting one, the one that I love to conduct, I think the last time I did it was in Chicago, is Tosca. I love to conduct Tosca. I don't love the opera Tosca,
Really?
but I love conducting it because it feels really good.
And what is it that you don't like about it? What is it that, as far as is it the
Well,
characters or?
no, it's all good. I mean, it's wonderful. What can I tell you? There are great tunes in it. It's a
Mhm. Oh,
wonderful
absolutely,
opera.
sure.
I don't know. There are moments in the first act that just wander and wander and wander. The Angelotti and
Right.
Cavaradossi stuff in the first act. He's trying to do something with the form and the motifs and all that. Ugh, yeah.
And it didn't work. Just felt that it
It
didn't
just
work.
rambles. It
Right.
just rambles. But then you get to the beginning of Act 3, and you get
Oh.
this thing with come on, that's the greatest stuff ever. And I will tell you, in my whole career, the most difficult thing, and when somebody wants to study conducting or conducting some pieces, I have them do it, is conducting I Lucevano le Stelle.
Really?
That is hard to conduct. If you watch the famous 3 tenors, and you watch the esteemed Maestro Meta conducting it, he can't. It's a mess. He just doesn't know. He's just everywhere. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
It's very specific how that aria goes and the things you have to do to make it go. Now, if I went to the Met and did it, they know how to play it. So you don't have to do anything.
Exactly.
You can do whatever. Do you know what I mean? But if you're doing it in a place for the first time, or in some city, or even in a place, say Chicago, where for some reason you don't have the first string play, the first line,
Right.
players, you have to do things that are clear because they will follow you.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you have to figure those sorts of things out. And so, I like to conduct it. I also like to conduct Butterfly. Butterfly will get me. But very few operas have moved me. Suor Angelica, which I did. And I did a performance with Kelly Caduce, whom you know.
Yes.
And we got to the stuff after Senza Mama. And
Yes.
all. I remember
Yes.
I couldn't. I was just crying. I started to cry.
Oh.
And and with the same concertmaster years later, I did a Traviata. And at the end, it was so good. It was not that I was so good, but it just was so good.
Yes.
That I had lost it. And at the end, he jumped on the podium. We just hugged each other because something happened.
Right.
You can't, but it's without being too graphic. It's like making love, sometimes it's always good, but sometimes it's great.
That's right. I said it's better. That moment is better. It's the best. It's better than the best sex you've ever had. And I said this. I mentioned this to George when I walked off to the wings, which were not many, but there are those few times where you feel like you're 4 foot off the floor, and it's unbelievable. I mean, you can't explain it. It's just a chemistry that happens that the gods set up. It's just
what's really hard for me, John. What's really hard, and this is, I think, a psychological thing. And I've talked to various people about it. People revel in their applause. They get up and it's time for their curtain call. It's great. I mean, I watching them do it, and they love it. They look for it. For some reason, psychologically, when I go to take my bow, my ears stop. I can't hear it.
Really? Huh.
I deny it. I
Mhm.
guess, that's not why I'm there.
Right,
I'm not
exactly.
there for that,
Exactly.
And the other thing that gets me in a performance when it's really good, uh, I think this happened in that first Norma. This is actually what happened. Um, we're getting to, De non voler livite at the
Mhm.
end. And I'm going and I'm singing and I'm saying to myself, Cripe, however did he think of this?
That's something.
How did this come out of a mortal? I
Mhm.
get the same thing in Orfeo and Euridice.
Mhm.
I get it sometimes in Mozart, you know.
Yeah.
How did they come out? And
Yeah.
what moves me the most, this is the closest to God that we get.
Yes.
Those people had a divine inspiration,
Yes.
not, especially Mozart, not of this world.
Yes. I
Okay.
agree.
Really, not of this world. And for us to sit back and watch and listen and allow that miracle to happen again
Mhm.
is, well, that's what it's all about. For me, that's what it's all about.
I agree. I totally agree. My, what is your relationship with singers in general? I mean, how do you find? Listen, you've casted many, 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 many operas. Um, do you really have a go-to people that you would instantly go to for if you were, say you were doing Norma again? Would you go to call someone and say, or recommend somebody, say, we're doing a Norma, do you have go-to people that you use?
Well, it depends on where you're working.
Mhm.
Sometimes you go someplace and you're stuck with whom they
With
have.
that, right? Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's the same thing with productions.
Mhm.
Sometimes you'll go to a company and it's the second or third time it's been a co-production,
Mhm.
and you're kind of stuck with the production
Right.
that you don't agree with,
Right.
and so you go through it and you talk to the stage director. Often, sometimes it's an assistant who's remounting it, and you try to make the changes you can make, um, but you're kind of stuck with it. But for the most part, I have to tell you that I was usually in charge of the people that I would bring in,
Mhm.
and I liked beginners. I
Mhm.
like people starting things. I like to have them first if there's adequate rehearsal so that we can
Right.
find something together. But as I always tell them, the singers, and I tell this to young coach conductor types too. The world is full of people who aren't very nice. For the most part, we want to be nice, and for the most part, we want to collaborate. You cannot collaborate if you don't come from a position of strength.
Okay.
When a singer would say to you, "Why are you doing this?" You ask them why they made that choice. They'll say, "Because I like it."
Yeah, that's not good enough.
That's a good reason. But why don't you like it? Do you know what I mean? The
Mhm.
only thing a singer has, the conductor too, but for the most part, we're more experienced. The only thing a singer has is knowledge. They have to know why. They have to have asked themselves, for example, La fleur que tu m'avais jeté, Carmen. Okay.
Right.
Melodic phrases start in low notes and they go up and they come down. There's usually a shape
Mhm.
like an arc in that. Why does that phrase start on a high note? Why? And it's a very hard F.
Right.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
why is that? And you say to the singer, it hasn't occurred to them. And you say, why does Don Jose start this aria on a high note? I
Right.
don't know. Hey, no, but sincerely. Well, think,
Mhm.
you know, and they don't like it. They really don't like it when you ask them to look at it. I remember working with a singer in Chicago. The first recitative the first aria in Figaro, bravo, signor padrone.
Good night.
So he said, bravo, signor padrone, ora comincio a capire, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, stop, Mr. X. What do you see there? No, what do you mean? Well, what do you see? What is there? Well, I don't know. Okay, what's the first word? Bravo. What is there? What did Da Ponte give you in that first word?
Mhm.
Uh, what do you mean? And I said, well, look at it. I said, he gave you a BR. How long that BR is done will tell you the attitude of Figaro towards the Count.
Mhm.
But he also gave you an A. Bravo. How bright, how dark, how anything that A is will tell us something that has not occurred to you. Signor, oh, an S, padrone. How open, how closed is that O?
Right.
It will tell us your attitude about how you feel about the Count.
Exactly.
These are the things that have been given to us. And the singers who don't have, they go to coaches and the coaches tell them things and they just do them. But if they don't sit down at the table and look at the music and say, I wonder why is this way? Why? And come up with reasons.
Right.
And they can't say it's because I like it.
Like it.
The conductor to do something, and if you don't like what the conductor tells you to do, you need a reason to do that, to say it.
I agree. With all the master classes, I've seen it more since we've been doing this, that they have so much. They can go to the phone and access anything that they possibly could. They can get the translation, they can get the text, they can get the phonetics, they can get this backstory. I just don't understand why singers don't use it. Young singers,
John, you look at conductors, you look at a lot of conductors, and you see their scores, and you look at them, and there are these blue lines and these red lines and these yellow lines. And okay, if to study, that's fine. But in the performance, why do you have that? It's like painting by color.
right?
If you use that to learn it, it's okay.
Mhm.
But after that, you don't need those things. It's like the divine books that Nico Castell wrote. They're excellent. They're wonderful tools. And there are things that, he researched. And if you don't happen to know a particular background on something,
Right.
an ancient word in Falstaff, of course, it's
Right.
a wonderful tool. But the singers just write it out. I've written a book now on Rigoletto.
Really?
Many pages. Yeah, it's phrase by phrase
Wow.
throughout the whole opera, and what I see and why I see it. And this is for singers, conductors, and coaches, and also some stage directors.
Wow.
Why oftentimes, and this sounds arrogant, but it's not, because it comes from strength. Why oftentimes many of the famous recordings you hear really aren't doing the justice that Verdi had put in. I'll send you a chapter. I'll send you a little bit.
Yeah.
And just to see the sort of thing. And this can make a difference. This can make a singing actor out of a singer. And these singers have to be singing actors. I remember Frank Corsaro. I don't know if anybody, who Frank Corsaro.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
Right. Well, many people don't, but he was a very famous stage director.
Yeah.
And I used to play his master classes. And he used to say to me, you know what I like about you, kid? What? He said, you're an actor at the piano. You act at the piano. And, right. And that's what you try to do as a conductor.
Yeah.
You try to be an actor. And, at the end of the night, I'm tired. And why am I tired? Because I sing every line to myself in the attitude and emotion that the character is singing at that moment.
Wow.
So I live everybody's music.
Right. Well, you did it. The first thing that we did together was Rigoletto, and I had a crap. I was maybe 21, 22 years old, and I had one of the supporting. I couldn't even tell you which role it was. It was so long ago. And the one thing that stands out in my mind, and that's 32 years ago, 33 years ago, I said, you came up to me, said, how can I help you? No conductor in the 40 years that I have sung had come up to me and said, how can I help you?
Well,
And it was it was an entrance. I don't recall the exact thing because I don't even remember the damn
Might have
role,
been Marullo's first entrance.
probably.
The hardest thing ever.
Right. It might have been. And you came to me and you said, how can I help you? How can I make this easier for you? And I just stood there. And in fact, I'm getting chills. My hair is standing up because I have, out of the 40 years that I've been singing, I've had maybe one other conductor come to me and say that. You took the time to come to a young singer, which you could have just, listen, come in here. You didn't have to do that. And that's something that stood out in my mind for all this time.
But don't you understand, John? Don't you understand that all music is chamber music? Everybody has to take off from the other person. And that's why in my whole career, I've never had a problem with an orchestra. Ever, 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 ever. Because I assume they're going to do the best they can do. And we're going to collaborate. And I'm not going to kill them so that they don't make music. Do you know what I mean? It's every music is chamber music. We all have to hear each other.
Yes.
We all have to. Now, there are singers that who will remain nameless, whom I hope never, ever, ever to be in the same room with again.
Yeah.
And that happens. Yes. And I'm sure the feeling was mutual. But, as you're going, the great part about live performance, you can go along and say, oh, that's the last time I ever have to hear that again.
Right.
Oh, good. Only 3 more performances to hear that. It's all right. And they're probably saying only 3 more performances to have that hack down there.
Oh, my God.
I mean, but I was very fortunate. I learned having to work so one-on-one with Renata or Morella Freni or Neil Shikoff. My God, I taught him everything.
Love him.
Hermano Mauro. We did
Stu.
Everybody. We did everything. Teaching Dr. Faustus to Richard Stowell. Nope, I know. And he was great. He was really good. Yeah. In the end, but being close up to sit next to Richard Bonning in rehearsals. And and get to know Joan and whatever, several productions, and to just hear what he had to say. He had a lot of very good things to say. Being with Nicola Ricchino, who, whether you liked his conducting or not, knew everything there was to know about everything.
Agreed.
And being his assistant and being whatever all else with him, learning. John Pritchard offered me when I was 30, offered me the head of music staff in Brussels. And at the same time, I was offered the head of music staff in St. Louis, and maybe stupid me took the St. Louis job. Everybody would have conducted earlier had I gone to Brussels, but there was the fear factor and there was all that.
Sure.
Anyway, being around people, just hearing what they had to say. If you hear what they have, I remember Ricchino saying, he said, in bel canto music, there are all these marks you see. They don't exist. The composers didn't write these things. These are the editors. Tardandi and all that stuff. Said all that isn't there. He said you have to invent this music as you go along, and that's what of course I love about that music and what makes it so hard and so boring to everybody, because the performers don't know how to invent it as they go. What really throws the singer? Sometimes you'll do. I'll say in Ballo in Maschera, at the end of Mor Roma, Prima in Grazia, there's this cadenza, okay, whatever. What they really hate doing is when I say, okay, Ella Fitzgerald? Yeah.
My favorite singer.
Well, please. I said, now I'd like you to sing this cadenza and scat it. Do a syllable, do a different syllable on whatever, you know what I mean? Or, and do it. And what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, just sing a different syllable, sing a different, la, dee, da, da, mi, la, whatever, on the way down, and just make it up. And then we do it, and then we do it again. And I said, do you understand that each of those notes now has a meaning? It's just not a way to get to the bottom. Yeah, da, 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 or right. Must the winter come so soon? Scat it. Must the winter come so soon? Ba, be, da, be, ya, dee, da. Then all those notes will have a meaning and a life. And it's something that you are putting into it. You're inventing at that moment. Right. And so those melismas come alive. and they hate it because you have to challenge them to think.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I find that, when you take singers off book, it scares the shit out of them. When you take them away from what's written, and not all, but singers, when you take away their blinders, they get scared. They
Well, Stephen Lord rule, Sitzprobes, no music stands. No music stands, because you've done so well. And you get to a Sitzprobe and the music stand is there and they're reading it. Right. I said, no. I don't care if you make a mistake. We need to come together. They hate it.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to make a mistake. And said, what do you mean? Make a mistake and make a big loud one. That's even better. Sure. Do you know what I mean? No, not allowed. I won't let people. No.
I remember.
The other thing, pencils make me crazy. You do stuff with people and they write it down. Like you say something, write it down. I said, if it makes sense,
use it.
You'll remember it when you go home. And when you get home, you can write it down. But don't write it down here. It takes me back to the Nico books, which we were on at one point. This Rigoletto book, what I don't want, and of course it'll happen if anyone reads it, what'll happen is people will read it and they'll do what I say.
Right.
I don't want them to do.
Exactly.
I challenge them. And throughout the book, I keep saying, why do you think this note is here? Why do you think Germont does this? There's a lot of Traviata in it too. Why do you think he does this? Preparation. I'll say to a singer, "Die Bildnis ist bezaubernd schön." I'll say to them, what is the time signature to this? Don't look. What is the time signature? 4/4. No, dear. It's 2/4. And that's the pulse you sing in. By the way, what's the key? 3 flats. It's a magic flute. That's a pretty good guess in the magic. Right. It's those sorts of things that will make you nuts because you're not prepared. I had a piano teacher once who would ask me, what year was this written? Who was it dedicated to? Da 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 da. Important. Yeah. It's just important. It might be just useless information to you, but if you don't know who the Esterhazys are, then you can't do any.
Exactly right.
So I don't know. It's been a fun trip.
Yeah,
it's been a fun trip. For me at this age now, I hope things will open up and I hope I'll do stuff. But, 45 years of being on the road, I think that's the one thing. Well, we don't teach the young people this. We don't teach them the sacrifices that you have. Yeah. There was an article, I didn't read it all the other day in the New York Times about some guy, Broadway producer or something that everybody said was bullying and da, 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 da. And dear Matthew Epstein sent it to me and he said, is this the death of art? And I said to him, Matthew, since when is theater a democracy?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You are working for the man. You can have your opinion.
Right.
But if you don't like it, there's the door.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that people don't have, it's like all the PC stuff that's going now. If you don't like something, say something.
Right.
Don't go home. Don't go home and write an editorial. Do you know what I mean? Take care of it. It's like me coming to you. How can I help you?
Exactly.
I miss the collaboration. I just sitting here and talking with you, knowing that you're understanding what I'm saying, some people don't. Knowing that's happening gives validation to all those nights in really bad hotels.
Nobody understands how lonely that could be. Nobody understands when you have family. Now, I was married at 22 or 3 and I had children, and the correspondence that, I just made it in for both my children's births, and then I had to run back out because I was doing whatever.
Okay.
And it's just, nobody gets it. And the problem is that, they think when you're on the stage, they think that that's a glorious position, but they don't see what's behind the scenes. Number one, the work, the sacrifice, that was a big sacrifice. I took, well, everyone that does it takes a section of their personal life, and it's not that it's for a bad cause. It's for our livelihood. It's something that's in our blood, and so it's just a way of life. But it can be very lonely. It could be very demeaning at times. It could be very frustrating because most of the time you're by yourself. And I found that, that's when my father passed away, that was one of the reasons why I said, I want to stay close to home. I couldn't do it anymore. I was 8 months out of the year I was away, and I couldn't do it anymore. Being Italian, of coming from the family that I had, we were cloistered sort of. And, I just said, it's not for me anymore. As much as I had the love for music, and now that I can do it, I can't, because there's nothing. People are not going to look at me, and they being the size I am and the shape and the ugliness that I've came into, they're not going to hire me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a bit general, John. I mean, remember, I'm the guy that gave Deborah Voigt her first job.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? When she was very big. And if I had had Despina available, I would have cast her as Despina.
See, Steve, that's the difference. But you know it. You know that, and you know the talent. There's the people out there today that are running these companies don't know the difference.
And they love to think that they do.
Yes.
And that's because it's not musicians that run musical art form companies. It's either businessmen or amateurs.
Yeah.
I remember someone who said, how do I say this so nobody can figure out who it is? They tried to figure out who could be Rigoletto. And it was suggested, well, why don't you get Cornell McNeil? And the person in question said, do you think he's available? Well, he's been dead for 15 years. They don't know. They don't know. And they don't make it their business to know.
That's the problem.
Sometimes their business is raising money. I got to tell you that, that in itself
is a job.
Yeah. The travel, going to the airport at 5 a.m. and feeling like hell and whatever. And, dealing with all that, going through security, which got harder and harder and harder.
Of course.
And walking to the gate. When I was young, it was fun. You just sprint down there. I'll be the first one on the airplane, I'll get the baggage up there and whatever, and then you'd pass these guys, with their heavy briefcase and their carry-ons, slowly walking to the gate to another, whatever they had to do. And, the day that I started to really feel like I was Willy Loman,
wow.
These guys, I said, oh, Jesus, I've become one of them. Yeah. Why? Why? I was doing Butterfly in Denver, and my father had this thing, and he got to the hospital, and his heart stopped for 13 minutes, and they got him back. But I was called right after the opening of Butterfly in the middle of the night saying, Pa, he's in coma and all that stuff. So, I flew, he lived for 2 more years after that. But while he was in there, I flew back and forth from Denver every other day, 6 times. I would fly home, then the morning after performance, fly back the next day and walk in and conduct Butterfly and go home and do it the next day. But John, you got to do it.
You do it.
This is what you do.
Exactly.
This isn't like, I don't have the money. You find the money.
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing with these young singers and established singers today. And I hope this will get on your video.
It will.
Money. Money. First of all, in America, on the regional level, nobody can make a good living.
No.
It's just never been possible to go from job to job to job, because
Yep.
you finish one job and you may not have another one for 6 months, or you finish one job and it has two performances, and then you go someplace and it costs you money while you're there. And of course, there are various fees, whatever, which take it down to nothing. In spite of that, I know a lot of singers in this pandemic and even before the pandemic who've made good money, millions,
Really?
who have nothing. Nothing. When I tell you nothing, I
I
mean
believe you. I
nothing.
believe it.
They have not put it aside. I know a very wonderful singer in his 50s
Ugh.
who has huge expenses and spends it all. I miss now the nice checks. I have to tell you, I miss them.
Mhm.
It took
Sure.
a long time to get to good checks, but and it takes everyone a long time to get to good
Sure.
checks.
Yeah.
But I miss those checks. But even when there weren't many of even great checks, I still saved it. I still
you.
put money aside. So when everything came crashing down and nothing happened, I'm comfortable. I'm quite comfortable.
Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I could have a lot more had I not spent, and had I not invested in a home in Maine that's in trust now for my nieces and nephew. All that costs a lot of money, but I'm still, that money could have been made. But how many toilets can you sit on at a time? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
How many cars can you drive at once?
Right, exactly.
Exactly. But I know people when this all happened who are devastated.
That's a shame.
Really, well, it's a shame, but it's not their own damn. It's their own damn.
It's their own fault. You never
well,
think it's going to end.
Yeah, but you feel you spend because you're on the road and you feel miserable.
True.
So what do? You go to the mall.
Of course.
Yeah, that's how that works. So I always told singers in master classes. I remember Chautauqua, I was giving a master class, and I said, everybody, first of all, they're all carrying Starbucks cups.
Yeah.
Duncan might be just as good, and I say, how much money do you have in your pocket? And they take it out and they say, I point out, and they say, I have $8. I said, good. 2 of those put in your right back pocket and do not touch it. You can spend the other 6. Do you know what I mean? But put it in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't pay their taxes.
Yeah.
Do you know how many singers I know in tax trouble?
I guess. Yeah. The business of singing, I was kind of smart with that. And I did, listen, I think Bohem's paid for this house. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. So I understand it. Stephen, unfortunately I have to get to John Packard.
Oh, the wonderful John Packard.
Absolutely.
Anyway, John.
Stephen, I love you. And it is truly an honor and a privilege to have you on our panel. And I love you, Stephen. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.